is the cotton market. Let's bring in our guest analyst. That's going to be Ted Seifried, Zaner Ag Hedge in Chicago. Ted, thanks for coming on. All right, what are your thoughts here, brother? What's going on?
Not a whole lot, Scott. Corn's trying to follow through on the strength that it found yesterday on a technical bounce off of all those, the series of lows that we've had in the last few weeks. I don't know, like you said when you were doing the prices, it's kind of faded a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see if it's able to continue. There's a lot of talk about weather right now. I guess it's the time of year where we start to do that. It's funny, about 10 days ago, we were talking about how dry it was and how, oh no, 2012 all over again. And now we're talking planting delays. So, we're always going to find something. And I think that's good. And that usually facilitates this sort of springtime bounce. The only problem with that is that we've got ending stocks for old crop projected over 2 billion bushels. And as we're looking at the trade guesses for next week, that doesn't seem to change too much. Yeah, I'm actually optimistic that we're going to see a smaller carryover for corn based on bigger exports and bigger feed, all kind of tied into that quarterly grain stocks number we saw, but it still leaves us at about a 2.1 billion bushel carryover or maybe slightly above. And then the soybean number, I think, could actually be growing. Maybe that export number might have to come down a little bit. Maybe you're looking at a 325 million bushel carryover or maybe 335 million bushel carryover in soybeans. So I don't know, it just doesn't seem like the year where we have to try to buy acres or encourage planting. Maybe that does end up being the case if we have an extended period of wet, but it's really early for something like that. So I'm curious to see how we end this week, Scott. I would like to see this springtime bounce continue, but I'm very skeptical about it. And in order for it to still look okay on a chart, we need a good close to this week. And it seems like we're in that decision-making process here today.
Yeah, it does. And, speaking to producers and the likes and hearing what they have to say on other channels, I guess we're waiting for a short cover rally and or a weather-related issue. And I think those are both kind of really the same story. The weather will, cause the shorts. But, other than that, where does a bull get any respite?
Ethanol numbers are good, right? So, hey, look, I'll be honest. Demand numbers for corn are pretty solid. Problem is we just have so much of it. And even though we're talking about acreage being less, you look at where acreage is smaller and you say, oh, well, it's not the areas that are typically the high yielding states. So if anything, that means the national average yield has a chance to be higher than trend line, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. We're really pulling at straws, Scott. I guess the best thing I could say is that maybe the fundamentals for corn aren't worse than they were 10 days ago, but I'm really grasping at straws here.
Yeah, I know. And then you think about that missing 6.3 million acres and you wonder, All right, stay right there. We're going to go away. We're going to pay some bills. We're going to come back and talk more with Ted Seifried. He's with Zaner Ag Hedge. He's in Chicago. We'll be right back after this. Okay, let's see if we can do a cattle and hog report without talking about bird flu. Impossible.
You got to prepare me for these things. No. We've been very volatile trying to digest where we go from here and what this all means. And, the good news is that we haven't extended the break to the downside. Yeah, yesterday was a heavy day, but it really just brought us down to the lows that we had for Monday. Okay, to your point, April live cattle are very unchanged, profoundly unchanged, basically. But that's not a bad thing, right? We are pausing here right above the 200-day moving average in the April fat cattle. And I think this is part of a basing situation, unless another news story hits us that really, really causes more uncertainty. But if not, the fundamentals I don't think have really changed. And I had been saying we were due for a correction. Well, this was maybe the catalyst for that. But maybe the correction could be over if we don't get any follow-up negative news. So it's just interesting how we technically do gravitate to these points, and then we kind of hold on to them for a little while we wait for something else to happen. And if nothing else happens, we go back to what the underlying fundamentals are, which in my opinion are still fairly friendly and justify the prices that we were at for most of March. And feeder cattle stronger today. That's, I think, good news. Feeders are the leaders, right? So yeah. Let's hold on to that. And then finally with hogs, it doesn't seem like much of a day, but after a new contract high close yesterday, we're holding on to those gains. We're actually building on them a little bit. That's a pretty good look, right? Yep. It's not a bad thing at all.
I agree. Great content as usual. Really appreciate you coming on, taking the time. I know you're busy, Ted. Ted Seifried, he's with Zaner Ag Hedge up in Chicago. We're going to bring it back down here to Tammy and I sitting here in Nashville in Music Row.
All right.
And I'll hand it back over to you.